Guys, we've been talking about Dana Brown, and he has his work cut out for him. And I want to talk to you about his future because Dana Brown got dropped, admittedly, into what appeared to be a very enviable position in taking the baton on a team that had spent its last 7 years going to the ALCS, if not beyond. But he spent his first couple of seasons now cleaning up messes that were made in the time between James Click's departure and his arrival. Bob Nightingale wrote in his column that Dana Brown's job is safe for now. Charlie, are you surprised that this is even a question right now for Dana Brown?
Well, media has space to fill, whether the ether of the internet or still, I guess, in some forms, hard copy of newspapers. When a team is grossly underachieved or just isn't good enough anymore to achieve at the high levels we've seen over the last 7 years, the name game is going to play, rumor, gossip. It's natural for fans to call for change, trade this guy, fire that guy. The Dana Brown right now should be in trouble, I would find absurd. It would be scapegoating, just as if you think the Astros' plight so far in 2024 on game day, it's as much or more about Joe Espada as player performance. Right? Dana Brown took over a team that probably had peaked. Right? They were at the peak. They just won the World Series, and last season came very close to getting back, but we're not close to the quality ball club in 2022. And eras wind down. Right? They're carrying the biggest payroll they've ever had this year. It's not Dana Brown's roster construction that has them in this place. It's not several years of a minor league system in decline and decay for various factors, not just ineptitude, but it is what it is. Dana Brown can't snap his fingers and whip an entire farm system into shape. Right? He's been here under a season and a half. Year one, you'd have to call a success. They did win the division, did go to game 7 of the ALCS. This year so far, debacle. But you can't hit the lottery every year. You can't win the race every year. But I guess if you're the jockey on the horse that pulls up lame or just fades in the stretch, or maybe this year actually isn't even alive in the stretch, but it's year 2. The early returns, and it's all speculative because none of those guys are in the major leagues yet, but the early returns on Dana Brown's first draft class here show some promise. Second draft class, upcoming at the All-Star break. That's the most critical part of Dana Brown's job to this point, because Dana Brown's not going to decide whether you're going to pay Kyle Tucker. I think fait accompli, they're not going to pay Framber Valdez with an extension. And the general manager major league roster decisions, will we have further clarity on who actually holds the hammer on making some of those? Over the next year and a half, they get out of the Abreu money, they get out of the Montero money. What are they going to do if they don't pay Tucker with all that money? If Jim Crane doesn't think that Dana Brown's the right guy to make those type of decisions and pursuing major league talent, well, then maybe by this time next year, Dana Brown's in real trouble. But I don't care if the Astros finish 71 and 91 this season. I don't think Dana Brown's head should be on the chopping block for it.
I don't think it should either. I think he's done an okay job, not a great job, just from what I've seen. And a lot of that, we don't know exactly who has what power in the organization. The one thing that we all hope, right, is that Crane's going to listen to Dana Brown a little more, listen to your general manager, a real baseball guy, not just retired players. Maybe the Abreu contract, the Montero contract kind of woke him up, like maybe we don't go down that road again. But I mean, I look at how they handled the Abreu thing, and when they talked about moving on from Abreu, Dana basically said he kind of led the charge on that. He let Jim Crane know what he was thinking, and they made the move. But I wouldn't want to be owning up to that. This is a quote from The Athletic about Dana talking about Abreu. We ultimately had a timeline. We just didn't know when the timeline was. A big part of it is when you set a timeline, you say, we want to see better at bats, and those better at bats should come in this time period. All that doesn't even make any sense right there. We had a timeline, but we didn't know when it was. And then what did you do with Abreu? You sent him basically for a week's vacation, and then he played 5 games at the Florida Complex League, didn't do all that well. He only had multiple hits in 1 game in the lowest level of professional baseball. And then he goes hitless in 2 games in AAA, and then you bring him back up to face the Mariners pitching staff in a crucial series. That makes zero sense to me. I'm just like, if you really wanted him to try and find it, don't you think it'd take more than 7 games? If the guy was hitting under 100 when you sent him down, I don't understand. I guess maybe Abreu only agreed to 3 weeks, and that's what it was. But if I'm the Astros, I'm looking at the calendar going like, I don't want to have to bring this guy back up to face the Mariners in this critical series with their dominant right-handed pitching staff. Doesn't make sense. And if you really wanted to give Abreu a chance to get out of it, he needs to play a few weeks in AA, AAA, and see what happens. Get some kind of real sample size. But they didn't do that. So, I think Dana's job's safe. He still has 2 more years on his contract. I don't think Jim Crane's looking to end any more contracts early right now after what he's having to pay Abreu and some other guys. So, yeah, I think Dana's going to stick around. Spot is the one I think has caught even more heat than Dana. So we'll see what happens there. But I just think the whole way they handled the Abreu thing, I guess they're all going to point the finger at somebody else. And at the end of the day, they basically lied to us. They told us they were seeing better at bats in the minors and they could see a difference in his timing. And then they're telling us, oh, yeah, we took a look at it and it wasn't getting any better and we had to get rid of the player. So I get it. You have to lie a little bit in sports, but you could just be an average baseball fan and see that Abreu is just not the player he used to be, and it was time to move on.
Or in the rookie league stuff, the old George Costanza line on Seinfeld. You can Google it, younger people. It's not a lie if you believe it. And they were so desperate to try to get some return on investment that they needed to send not Bagwell, but was it Vasco da Gama? Who was the Fountain of Youth guy? Ponce de Leon?
Yeah,
I think it was Ponce.
Yeah, and the well was dry on Abreu. So getting into the major leagues, and we discussed it at the time, the Seattle series, that was somewhere between odd and ridiculous, but was almost a sense of, okay, let's get this over with, get him in there where he can't really be expected to hit. He won't hit, and then finally we can cut the cord. And the one on Dana Brown I want to mention, we're not sure the blend. Dana Brown aggressively said, go to 5 years, $95 million on Josh Hader. Then that one is on him, though, again, financial decision on that level. It didn't happen without Jim Crane's approval.
Yeah, no, it's true. And look, everything we've heard on the Abreu situation was that it was out of Joe Espada's hands. That also begs the question, then, how much was it in Dana Brown's hands? We'll probably never know. I assume he had a voice in the room, but I can't imagine he had the voice in the room, because I think ultimately that was a decision that was made by Crane and Bagwell to sign him initially. And then I think, to cut bait on him for such a giant, loss to take, to eat $30 million, that has to be ultimately a Crane decision. So again, we don't know, and we'll never know how much responsibility lied where. We'll never know the truth on that. I guess to Dana Brown's credit, kind of look on the positive. He did sign Victor Caratini, which has been a very important addition given Diaz's offensive struggles and then health. Ronel Blanco, moving him to a starter role, seemed to be his decision as well. That has worked out amazingly well for the Astros to this point. Trey Cabbage was just a guy. I mean, I don't think anyone expected much out of him, and he's just been okay.
It was a lotto ticket.
Yeah. And so, he just looks like he's not overmatched. He just looks like a mediocre baseball player at this point. But at this point, you need warm bodies, so you'll take it. So I guess long roundabout way to say, he's made some good things. We don't know how much of his press conferences and the double talk was him carrying water for decisions that he had little to no part in. Doesn't matter. Here's where we're at. Should they, we're looking at this team right now. They're 9 back. We'll know a little bit more about what this team is after they get through this schedule where they're facing what they've got, the White Sox, then they got the Orioles, then the Rockies, Mets, Blue Jays, Twins, Marlins. And that comes before their big series against the Rangers and Mariners. So that run, I mean, should they catch fire?
That's the season.
Yeah, I mean this does look like the season. So Charlie, I just want to get you guys' opinion. I mean, we're talking about Dana Brown and how can he affect change on this team right now? Should they be entertaining trades?
Well, I think, and this is a fair criticism of Dana Brown, hindsight, real world, however you want to look at it, but he was insufficiently aggressive in adding one more arm capable of eating some innings at the major league level. I understood the hedge on that. We'll see if we're able to dog paddle along and waiting on Garcia, and we're paying McCullers $17 million, and we want to add a Jake Odorizzi type. But the bottom line is they counted on guys to stay healthy and or pitch better than they have, and it's helped get them to where they are. On the schedule, 15-9 is not a Herculean stretch of baseball. That's 625 baseball, which over a full season wins you 101 games. But again, 1 month, not quite 1 month worth of baseball going 15-9, extremely doable against the schedule the Astros have to the All-Star break. Well, that would get them to 500 at the break. And if they're at 48-48 at the break, now they might still be 9 games or worse behind Seattle, but there's no way they're out of the wild card race completely if they're at 500 at the All-Star break. So that might be one reasonable milestone I put out there. Milestone before those are saying, no, go straight to the tombstone.
Yeah, I think I want to play the waiting game here a little bit. I want to see what they look like. We know the system. They don't have a lot of prospects that they need to be parting ways with. They need to stock that thing up. So you don't want to trade the future if this team really isn't capable of making the playoffs. But as we pointed out, who knows with Arrighetti? He's a rookie. Verlander's getting older. They're going to need more arms. There's no doubt about that. At what point do you just kind of be like, we are what we are? And, talking about Dana Brown, the JP France thing, I know we weren't expecting a ton out of him, even though he was really good last year, but, he had the arm issues early in spring training and he ended up, getting through it, but then we haven't even heard that he's picking up a baseball anymore. So it's just all their depth is gone. So I just want to see as we get closer to the All-Star break is, like we said, this is the season right here. Let's see how they get through this stretch of games. And if it's looking like they have a chance to make a move, then yeah, I'm fine with a back end of the rotation type starter, as long as you don't have to give up too much. I think that's what they need. Dana said a bat too. And I mean, if Jake Myers and Chaz and Singleton and Dubon are still really not getting it done, and Pena's still scuffling, but they're somehow in it, then yeah, maybe you go get a bat. I'd be okay with that. But it's just, if the season looks like it's already not going to work out, then sometimes you just got to be wise. And sometimes it's not your year, and sometimes it's not your fault. Guys get injured, bad luck, things happen. Guys get old, what have you. So sometimes you just, need to take a step back and be like, all right, well, we'll get them next year. Hopefully we're not to that point, but we're going to know that here in a few weeks.
And on the starting pitchers, the Angels moved Tyler Anderson. The White Sox, Garrett Crochet or Eric Fetty. Dana Brown should be in on those conversations. The problem is several contenders, a number of them much better positioned right now than the Astros in the standings, have way better farm systems. So anyone who wants to come in over the top of any Astros offer can do so. Right? The Astros, they have a serious lack of premium prospects. They don't have anyone who you'd say, wow, that's what Jackson Merrill was with the Padres, having a terrific rookie season for them at 21. What the Orioles still expect Jackson Holiday to be, or 2 years ago, what Gunnar Henderson was before he got to the majors. The Astros have none of that. Now, maybe one of those guys will explode. Maybe Bryce Matthews becomes a future star, but he's not an elite prospect. But in the Astros system, Bryce Matthews, a 20-year-old outfielder named Luis Baez, who's also putting up numbers on the same low A ball or high A ball team where Matthews is, those kind of guys, untouchable. Maybe they'd view Melton that way, if you're looking to rent a pitcher. But all your Shea Whitcombs and Will Wagners and Jesus Bastidas, they're not quality as prospects. So you're not going to get a legit major league back of the rotation guy, much less a number 3 type starter with what the Astros have to offer relative to what the Dodgers or the Orioles or drop down to the Rangers or the Guardians could put in play. So sometimes it's just no longer your time.
One of the questionable quotes Dana Brown said in that Abreu presser, he was asked about it, and he said there were no lessons to be learned from the Jose Abreu situation, but there sure seems to be, despite Bagwell telling Brian McTaggart that the scouting and analytics department was in favor of the Abreu signing. There's no way, in my estimation, that the analytics department was on board with a 3-year deal, which a 2-year deal does not make Jose Abreu play any better, but it does keep you from eating a full $30 million, gives you more flexibility under the CBT. So maybe there were no lessons for Dana Brown, but does the Abreu outcome influence Jim Crane going forward and signing off on future free agent contracts?
35-year-old players, yes. And Abreu, when he finished up with the White Sox, he was coming off a 307 season, but his power disappeared. Right? He hit 1 home run his last 55 games with the White Sox at 35 years old. That was a real warning sign. And I mean, as recently as 3 weeks ago, he still has the bat speed. Bat speed's useless if you can't make bat hit ball. So, it was a 3-year deal. I mean, what are the Padres thinking right now about the Xander Bogaerts 11-year contract they gave him? So it wasn't a long-term debilitating deal. Yuli Gurriel was washed up. And I know the Pineapple will always have his adorers and should. But replacing Yuli with Abreu on paper was an absolute upgrade. But that's why you go play on the field and, fantasy leagues and simulation games that are played on paper or on computers anyway. And Abreu just failed. You mentioned, Brandon, going to the 3rd year. That was illogical. No one else was willing to go there. The Astros felt, okay, it'll close the deal. And you know what? We're the Houston freaking Astros. It's going to work because we're the Houston freaking Astros. So I'm not going to say hubris got them on that transaction, but if they needed a little reminder that they're not bulletproof and they're capable of some big gaffes, they got one. Not tragic.
No, the Astros have found value in older players for many years. Verlander was one of them when they originally brought him over, and that worked out. And, to some extent, Michael Brantley. Now, Brantley was 32 the first year he joined the Astros. He wasn't 35. But then they decided to go ahead and give him another year at age 36. And that didn't work out either. So, yeah, I'm thinking with some of these older players that they should learn their lessons here. Sometimes you can find great value. It's true. But you always have that injury risk. And even with Verlander, he tore his Tommy John and you lost years and money with him, even though he was great for you, helped you win a couple World Series. There were also some down years there with an older player. So hopefully they move on from that. But there's got to be a lot of lessons learned that Dana Brown's just walking that tight, that high wire. He doesn't want to say anything to upset Jim Crane. Or Jeff Bagwell or anybody, he's just going to say, hey, sometimes, free agent contracts work out. Sometimes they don't. But if I'm in that building, I'm not going after the 35-year-old guys anymore. And, they just paid Altuve a lot of money for a lot of years, and he's no spring chicken, but he's arguably the best player in your franchise history, and they want him to stay with the Astros. I think that's kind of a different conversation with him.
Charlie, you mentioned length of contract also being a deterrent. How does this influence their thought process on Tucker and giving him a long-term deal and paying him into his late 30s?
Look, if Kyle Tucker is insistent upon a 10-year deal effective when he can become a free agent, I'm not in a rush to do that. And Kyle Tucker's been a terrific player over the last 3 years. He's not Aaron Judge. In the batter's box, I know he's been better than Yordan so far this season, but overall, he's not Yordan Alvarez. A 10-year contract for a guy who part of his game, not that he's a burner, but best base runner on the Astros for my money, best percentage base stealer, fabulous, something like 92-13 in his career. When he gets to his mid-30s, Kyle Tucker loses a step in the outfield on the bases. I think it hurts his game more than it does a guy like Yordan Alvarez. But if you were to do, right, they control Tucker for next year, his age 28 season. You did 7 years on top of that. So an 8-year contract, takes him through his age 35 season. Younger than when you gave Abreu 3 years. Altuve, and Josh nailed it, he's a special case. If Altuve is a big sunk cost on the back end, which is a real good bet, right? They de-escalated the cash on the barrelhead, but Altuve's counting 25 years toward the tax when he's 39 years old, right? There's already this season. It's just the first half of the season. Maybe he goes bonkers the second half, but Altuve's shown a little decline this year. Though, props to him. He's yet to commit an error at second base so far this season. So, you have to weigh the age. Right? Kyle Tucker's in the heart of his prime. If you give Kyle Tucker 7 years now, you are getting to eat the entirety of the prime of his career. And if you sacrifice a little on the back end there, so be it. Right? Altuve, they sign him later in his career to that loss leader phase of his career in all likelihood. But Altuve at ages 32 and 33 is coming off having put huge seasons on the board, albeit injury ravaged a couple of years ago. But he is, Jose Altuve is one of one in terms of a contract negotiation for the Astros. But if you're a large market, right, and the Astros don't have Yankee Dodger money, but they're there with just about everybody else and ahead of most of the others, if you're not willing to pay up for a 27-year-old star in his prime, what are you doing?
Yeah, it made me feel less confident when Dana said, "Oh, I'm sure Tucker's agent's going to want 10 years," and I almost feel like Bregman's kind of an afterthought now. I don't even think we even consider him being back next year. We're already talking about Tucker. But I will say this, Dana was quoted about older players. He said, "I'm not the type of guy that's going to be in the habit of signing a lot of older guys. I think sometimes you have to sign older guys, particularly when you have an opening and you have to plug that opening. You may have to do it. I think the older they get, you should try to get less years." No way. I wonder what he's saying there. But, anyway, so Dana doesn't want to do that, but sometimes you have to. It makes sense. But I'm getting a little more concerned about the Tucker thing. This doesn't look good when he's like, "I think we're going to eventually try and get together and make an offer, but they're going to probably want 10 years. That doesn't look good.
I mean, their ideal, frankly, is over the next season and a half, Jacob Melton becomes Kyle Tucker. I mentioned Baez, 20 years old, that when he's 22 going into 2026, hey, there's 2/3 of your outfield and Jake Myers, Chas McCormick, someone else is the third guy, and you save $250 million that you didn't have to pay Kyle Tucker.
Yeah, and look at George Springer. Last time we checked, he was hitting under 200. So these things can go poorly. Loperfido could maybe be an option for you too. Who knows? And Pedro Leon's actually been playing this year, even though he's getting a little bit older for a minor league player.
Yes, indeed. But it'd be nice if we could see what Pedro Leon looked like at the big league club. It's not like you don't have some need to get some. But again, it just depends, because I don't see how they're going to treat any other position differently than how they've treated first base, where it really hasn't been about a meritocracy. And granted, I also understand, Sue, you're not going to expect a rook to come up from AAA and save your season, but you need something. You need something to happen. Again, Dana Brown is not in an enviable position now. He's got a lot of mess to clean up. He's got a lot of things to fix. Hopefully they don't press the panic mode and do anything too hastily, but we're going to have to see how this goes. And the trade deadline will be like one of our first real indications of what Dana Brown's capable of. And then again, an off season and of possibilities. So we'll end it there. That's going to be it for this episode of Stone Cold Stros. If you listen on podcast and you enjoy the show, please consider give us a 5-star rating. Charlie, Josh, and I will catch you next week, but you don't have to wait that long to get your Houston sports fix. You guys know, because all you have to do is subscribe to Sports Map Houston and Sports Map Texans on YouTube, and we'll have more content for you during the week. And until next time, go Stros.